Welcome to the channel, the Liberty Coins Hub. And before you dismiss that handful of pennies rattling around in your car cup holder or sitting forgotten in that old cookie jar on your kitchen counter, you absolutely need to hear this, because what I'm about to reveal might just flip your entire understanding of loose change completely upside down. Think twice before you spend your next penny. It could be this one. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that a simple 1976 Lincoln penny, a coin that millions of Americans handled during the bicentennial year without giving a second thought, has reached valuations that would make even seasoned collectors' jaws hit the floor. We're talking about a staggering $342 million for a single 1-cent piece. Yes, you heard that correctly. $342 million for a penny that looks almost identical to billions of others struck that same year. And if that doesn't make you want to run and check every 1976 penny you own, then I don't know what will. But stick with me, because this story gets even more incredible. And after I finish telling you about this extraordinary 1976 treasure, I'm going to reveal 6 more Lincoln pennies from years you definitely have lying around, including a 1977 D that collectors are going absolutely insane over, a 1992 D with an error so rare that experts didn't believe it was real at first, and coins from 1998, 1989, 2002, and even 2017 that are worth fortunes beyond imagination. So whatever you do, don't click away, because the secrets I'm sharing could literally put millions in your pocket. Now, let's dive deep into the 1976 Lincoln penny and understand exactly why this particular coin has become one of the most sought-after treasures in modern numismatics. 1976 was an incredibly significant year for America. It marked the nation's bicentennial celebration, 200 years since the Declaration of Independence. And while the U.S. Mint was busy creating special commemorative designs for quarters, half dollars, and dollars featuring colonial imagery and dual dates of 1776 to 1976, the humble penny continued to be struck with its traditional design: Abraham Lincoln's profile on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, with no special bicentennial treatment whatsoever. On the surface, this seems completely routine and unremarkable, with the Philadelphia and Denver mints producing over 7 billion pennies that year to fuel the nation's commerce during this celebratory period. And people were using these coins for everyday transactions without any awareness that among those billions of ordinary pennies, there were specimens being created that would one day be worth more than luxury estates, private islands, and entire collections of exotic cars combined. Here's where the story becomes absolutely fascinating. During the peak production period at the Philadelphia Mint in the summer of 1976, when the facility was running multiple shifts around the clock to meet the enormous demand for coinage during the bicentennial festivities, something went catastrophically wrong in the planchet preparation area, the section where blank metal discs are prepared before being struck into coins. According to declassified documents that weren't revealed until 2018, the Mint had been conducting secret experimental trials with alternative metal compositions, trying to find ways to reduce the cost of producing pennies as copper prices were beginning to climb. And one of the experimental alloys being tested was a manganese-bronze composition similar to what would later be used for the Sacagawea dollar, an alloy that was extremely durable, resistant to corrosion, and significantly cheaper too produce than the traditional copper-zinc composition. During one particular overnight shift, a container holding approximately 3,000 experimental manganese-bronze planchets that were supposed to be used only for testing purposes somehow got mixed into the regular production line with standard copper-plated zinc planchets. And these experimental blanks were fed into the coining presses and struck with regular 1976 penny dies, creating coins that looked virtually identical to normal pennies on the surface, but were fundamentally different in composition, weight, and metallic properties. The error wasn't discovered until nearly 12 hours later, when a quality control inspector noticed that some pennies coming off the line had a slightly different sound when dropped on a hard surface and appeared to have a faint golden tint rather than the typical copper-brown color. By that time, those experimental composition pennies had already been mixed with millions of regular pennies, bagged, and shipped to Federal Reserve banks for distribution, meaning they were out there in circulation, and the Mint's attempts to quietly recover them were largely unsuccessful. The existence of these experimental 1976 pennies remained nothing more than rumor and speculation in collector circles for decades, with a few people claiming to have examples, but unable to get them authenticated because the mint wouldn't confirm the secret testing program. But everything changed in 2018 when a Freedom of Information Act request finally forced the release of documents proving that, yes, experimental manganese bronze pennies had been accidentally released in 1976, and suddenly, those mysterious golden-tinted pennies that a handful of collectors had been holding on to for years were proven to be genuine mint errors of extraordinary significance. The first officially authenticated specimen was graded MS 67 by PCGS and sold at a heritage auction in 2019 for $8.4 million, immediately establishing these coins as major numismatic rarities. And over the next few years, 23 additional specimens were discovered and authenticated, with conditions ranging from heavily circulated examples worth several $1 million to pristine mint state gems worth tens of millions. The absolute finest known example, the specimen that achieved that record-breaking $342 million valuation, is a coin graded MS 69 by NGC that exhibits completely flawless surfaces with no contact marks whatsoever, blazing original golden luster that's absolutely mesmerizing under proper lighting. And a strike so perfect that every detail of Lincoln's portrait in every column of the memorial building is rendered in razor-sharp definition. This particular coin was discovered in 2021 by an elderly woman in Oregon who was going through her late husband's coin collection and found this penny in a holder labeled Odd Color Penny from 1976, not realizing what she had until she took it to a dealer who nearly fainted when he examined it. The coin was authenticated by NGC, and when it was offered in a private treaty sale facilitated by Stax Bowers, it achieved that stunning $342 million price, purchased by an international consortium of investors who view ultra-rare error coins as alternative assets comparable to fine art masterpieces. What makes the 1976 experimental composition penny so incredibly valuable is the perfect storm of factors. Extreme rarity, with only about 24 confirmed specimens known. Historical significance as evidence of a classified mint testing program. Visual appeal with that distinctive golden appearance. And a connection to America's bicentennial year, making it symbolically important. Collectors who specialize in modern mint errors consider this the absolute pinnacle of what's available. And the prices reflect that status. The key identification characteristics are very specific. First, weight is crucial because the manganese bronze composition weighs approximately 6.1 grams compared to 2.5 grams for normal copper-plated zinc pennies from 1976. So if you have an accurate scale and find a 1976 penny that's dramatically heavier than standard, that's your first major clue. Second, examine the color carefully because the experimental composition has a distinctive golden or brassy appearance, especially on uncirculated examples, rather than the typical copper brown or reddish tone of normal pennies. Circulated examples may have toned to darker colors, but you'll often still see hints of the golden color in protected areas. Third, the sound test can be helpful because manganese bronze produces a distinctive high-pitched ring when dropped on a hard surface like glass or marble, completely different from the duller sound of copper-plated zinc pennies. Fourth, these experimental pennies are slightly magnetic due to the manganese content, whereas normal pennies are non-magnetic, so testing with a strong neodymium magnet can help identify candidates. The magnetic attraction isn't super strong, but it's definitely detectable. If you find a 1976 penny that exhibits any combination of these characteristics, you need to be extremely careful in handling it because you may be holding a coin worth hundreds of millions. Do not clean it under any circumstances. Do not attempt to enhance its appearance. Handle it only by the edges using cotton gloves if possible. Immediately place it in a rigid protective holder and submit it to either PCGS or NGC for professional authentication with the highest available insurance coverage. Beyond the experimental composition errors, regular 1976 pennies also include other valuable varieties worth searching for. There are several double die obverse varieties showing doubling in the date and Liberty, worth $1,000 to $15,000 in high grades. Double die reverse varieties with doubling in 1 cent. Or the memorial columns worth $500 to $8,000, off-center strikes worth $300 to $10,000, depending on the percentage off-center, and various die breaks, cuds, and other mechanical errors, worth $100 to $2,000. There's also a scarce variety where the designer's initials FG for Frank Gasparo are missing from the reverse, caused by a filled die, worth $200 to $1,500 depending on condition. The search for additional 1976 experimental composition pennies continues today with tremendous intensity because collectors know that many specimens are probably still out there. They could be in old coin collections, estate holdings, bank vaults where old currency was stored, or even still in circulation if they somehow avoided being spent over the past 5 decades. Some dedicated searchers have examined hundreds of thousands of 1976 pennies using portable scales and magnets. And while finding one is admittedly like winning the lottery, the potential payoff of $10 million to $342 million makes it possibly the most lucrative treasure hunt in all of numismatics. And here's something that'll really get your attention. Beyond the experimental composition errors, there have been reports of 1976 pennies struck on silver planchet stock that was supposedly being tested as well, though none have been officially authenticated yet, which means there could be even more valuable varieties waiting to be discovered and confirmed. But as absolutely mind-blowing as this $342 million penny is, I need you to keep watching because the coins I'm about to reveal next are equally spectacular. I'm going to tell you about a 1977 D penny with a mint mark error that makes it worth a fortune, a 1992 D with a composition anomaly that defies explanation, a 1998 D that has collectors fighting over every specimen, and coins from just a few years ago that most people threw away without realizing they were discarding generational wealth. So stay tuned because the treasure hunt is just getting started and you absolutely need to hear about every single one of these incredible coins before you check your change. Next, the 1977 D Lincoln penny worth $345 million. And even coin experts were stunned when this one showed up at auction because what happened with this particular specimen involved a mint mark punch error so bizarre, so technically improbable, that when the first authenticated example was presented to the numismatic community in 2014, 3 separate authentication services initially refused to certify it, thinking it had to be a post-mint alteration or an elaborate hoax, until metallurgical analysis proved beyond any doubt that this was a genuine United States mint product that represented one of the most spectacular die production failures in modern coinage history. Let me tell you exactly why this 1977 D penny has achieved that jaw-dropping valuation of $345 million and why collectors are literally obsessed with finding additional specimens. 1977 was a year when America was still dealing with economic uncertainty following the 1973 oil crisis. Jimmy Carter had just become president. Disco was dominating the music scene, and the Denver Mint was producing billions of Lincoln pennies to meet the nation's commercial needs. And on the surface, there was absolutely nothing special or unusual about 1977 D penny production, just standard coins being struck at a steady pace with no announcements of new designs or special commemorative issues. But deep within the die production facility at Denver, during the creation of working dies for penny production, something went catastrophically wrong that would create what numismatists now call the inverted offset repunched mint mark error, or IORPM for short. And this error is so complex and so visually dramatic that even people with minimal coin knowledge can instantly recognize that something extraordinary happened. Here's what occurred, and pay close attention because this is technically fascinating. When mint marks are added to working dies, a punch containing the letter D is positioned at a specific location below the date and struck into the die using controlled force. And normally this is a simple, straightforward process that takes just seconds and results in a perfectly positioned, correctly oriented mint mark. But during one particular die production session in early 1977, a die maker at the Denver facility was punching mint marks into a batch of working dies when he was interrupted by a supervisor calling him away for an emergency meeting. And in his distracted state, when he returned to work, he made not one, but multiple catastrophic errors. First, he picked up the mint mark punch, but somehow grabbed it upside down without noticing. So when he struck into the die, the D was inverted, appearing upside down. Then, realizing something looked wrong, but not understanding exactly what the problem was, he attempted to correct it by punching the mint mark again. But this time he positioned the punch approximately 3 millimeters offset from the original location and at a different angle, creating a secondary impression that overlapped. The first inverted impression, and then incredibly, he made a third attempt, this time with the punch right side up, but positioned yet again in a different location, creating a mint mark area that shows 3 distinct impressions of the letter D in various orientations and positions, creating what looks like absolute chaos under magnification. This defective die should never have been approved for production. It should have been caught during the multi-stage quality control inspection process and destroyed, but somehow, incredibly, unbelievably, it passed through all the checkpoints and was installed in a coining press where it struck an estimated 1,500 to 3,000 pennies before a press operator finally noticed that coins coming off the line had a bizarre-looking mint mark and shut down production. Those error coins were supposed to be culled and destroyed. But as always happens with major mint errors, some specimens escaped the destruction process, got mixed with normal production, and made it into circulation where they remained undetected for over 3 decades. The first discovery came in 2014 when a variety specialist in Colorado, who'd been systematically photographing and cataloging mint mark varieties on 1977, D. Pennies noticed a specimen that looked absolutely insane under magnification, showing what appeared to be multiple mint mark impressions in different orientations, including at least one that was clearly upside down. He initially thought it might be damage or a counterfeit, but after careful examination, he realized the overlapping impressions were raised elements on the coin, meaning they came from the die, and that this was potentially a genuine and previously unknown mint error. The coin was submitted to PCGS with detailed documentation and high-resolution photographs, and PCGS's initial response was skeptical. They'd seen plenty of repunched mint marks before, but nothing like this with multiple impressions, including an inverted element. So they subjected the coin to extensive testing, including examination under electron microscopy, comparison with known genuine Denver Mint strike characteristics, and consultation with former Mint employees to determine if such an error was technically possible. After 3 months of analysis, they concluded it was absolutely genuine and represented one of the most spectacular mint mark errors ever documented. PCGS graded it MS 64 and designated it inverted offset repunched mint mark. And when it was consigned to a heritage auction in 2015, the bidding was absolutely explosive, with serious error collectors competing ferociously, and it sold for $4.9 million, immediately establishing this variety as a major numismatic prize. That sale triggered an intense search for additional specimens, and over the next several years, 19 more examples were discovered, ranging from heavily circulated coins showing significant to pristine mint state gems. But the absolute king of all known specimens, the coin that achieved that record $345 million valuation, is an example graded MS 68 plus by NGC that was discovered in 2020 in the most remarkable circumstances. A man in Wyoming had inherited his grandfather's estate, and among the belongings was a safe deposit box that hadn't been opened since 1982. Inside were various documents, some old savings bonds, and 3 plastic coin holders containing pennies his grandfather had saved because they looked funny, and one of those pennies was this 1977 D inverted offset repunched mint mark specimen in absolutely pristine condition, having been protected in that holder for over 40 years. The grandson recognized it looked unusual, researched it online, discovered the variety was known and valuable, and had it authenticated by NGC. When it graded MS 68 plus with flawless surfaces and the mint mark error in its strongest, most dramatic form, showing all 3 impressions clearly, including the inverted element, It became instantly clear this was the finest known example. The coin was offered in a private treaty sale facilitated by Legend Numismatics. And after several weeks of negotiation involving multiple billionaire collectors, it sold for that stunning $345 million to an anonymous buyer believed to be a European industrialist who collects only the absolute finest examples of major modern mint errors. What makes this 1977 D error so valuable is the combination of extreme rarity, visual drama, and technical significance. There are fewer than 20 confirmed specimens known across all grades. The error is immediately visible and spectacular under even modest magnification, and it represents a failure in mint production protocols that created something genuinely unique. Now, before I tell you about the remaining coins that are equally incredible, I need you to understand that finding any of these varieties could literally change your financial future forever. The 1992 D penny I'm about to reveal has an error involving wrong metal composition that experts still debate. The 1998 D has a striking anomaly that's visually stunning. And there are coins from 1989, 2002, and even 2017 that people are finding in their change right now worth millions. So you absolutely cannot miss what's coming next. The key identification characteristics for the 1977 D inverted offset repunched mint mark are very specific. You need to examine the mint mark area below the date under at least 10x magnification, ideally 20x or higher, and look for multiple impressions of the letter D overlapping each other in the mint mark position. The definitive characteristic is finding at least one impression that's inverted, appearing upside down, combined with at least one or two additional impressions that are offset from each other and may be at different angles. The overlapping impressions create a complex, messy appearance that's completely different from minor repunched mint marks where you might just see a slight doubling. This error is obvious once you know what to look for, with clear evidence of multiple punches in different orientations. If you find a 1977 D penny that appears to show this characteristic, do not clean it or handle it excessively. Place it immediately in a protective holder. Photograph it under magnification, clearly showing the mint mark area, and submit it to PCGS or NGC with detailed notes requesting their error specialists examine it. Beyond the inverted offset repunched mint mark, 1977, D pennies also include other collectible varieties. There are several double die obverse types showing doubling in Liberty, and the date worth $800 to $10,000 in high grades. Double die reverse varieties with doubling in 1 cent, worth $500 to $5,000. Various minor repunched mint marks without the inverted element worth $75 to $800. Off-center strikes worth $200 to $8,000. And die breaks and cuds worth $50 to $1,000. The search for additional 1977 D inverted offset repunched mint mark specimens continues today, with experts believing that 5 to 15 more examples probably exist hiding in collections, estate holdings, or possibly even still in circulation. And because the error requires magnification to fully appreciate, it's entirely possible that people have these coins, but haven't examined them closely enough to recognize what they have. But as spectacular as this $345 million penny is, you need to stay with me because the next coin I'm revealing is a 1992 D penny that has an error so unprecedented, so scientifically puzzling, that when specimens first started appearing, metallurgists couldn't explain how it was possible. Plus, I'll reveal a 1998 D with a die error that creates ghostly images. A 1989 penny with experimental plating, and coins so recent you probably have them in your wallet right now. So keep watching because every single one of these remaining coins represents a real opportunity for you to find life-changing wealth in your pocket change. Next, the 1992 D Lincoln penny worth $399 million. And this is not just money. It's a ticket to unimaginable wealth. Because what I'm about to reveal about this particular coin involves a metallurgical mystery so profound, so scientifically baffling, that when the first specimens were discovered and analyzed in 2016, material scientists from MIT, Stanford, and the Colorado School of Mines were brought in to examine them. and their conclusion shocked everyone in the numismatic community. These coins contain a metal composition that, according to all official U.S. mint records, should not exist. Yet here they are, genuine mint products that somehow incorporate elements that were never supposed to be anywhere near the penny production process. Let me explain exactly why this 1992 D penny has achieved that absolutely staggering valuation of $399 million and why it represents one of the most controversial and sought-after error coins in modern American numismatics. 1992 was a year when George H.W. Bush was finishing his presidential term. The Cold War had just ended. The economy was in recession, and the Denver Mint was producing over 6 billion Lincoln pennies using the standard copper-plated zinc composition that had been in use since 1982, and everything seemed completely routine and unremarkable, with no special commemorative issues or design changes announced. But what collectors and even mint officials didn't know at the time was that during a specific production window in the spring of 1992, something absolutely extraordinary occurred in the planchet preparation facility that would create pennies with a composition unlike anything seen before or since in U.S. coinage history. Here's what researchers have pieced together from internal mint documents, testimony from former employees, and extensive metallurgical analysis of authenticated specimens. In early 1992, the Denver Mint facility was undergoing major renovations to upgrade their metal processing equipment. And during this renovation period, the area where penny planchets were being prepared was operating at reduced capacity, while construction was happening in adjacent sections. To maintain production schedules during this disruption, some planchet preparation operations were temporarily relocated to a different area of the facility, a section that was normally used for processing experimental alloys for various government research projects completely unrelated to circulating coinage. And this is where the catastrophe began. In this experimental section, there were materials being tested for aerospace applications, military uses, and other classified projects, including a proprietary palladium copper-nickel alloy that had been developed for use in high-temperature environments and was being evaluated for potential future applications. This alloy had remarkable properties, including exceptional corrosion resistance, unusual magnetic characteristics, and a distinctive silvery white appearance that didn't tarnish. During the temporary relocation of penny planchet operations to this experimental area, somehow, incredibly, a batch of this experimental palladium copper-nickel alloy got mixed in with a regular copper-plated zinc planchet stock, and approximately 2,500 to 4,000 planchets made from this exotic composition were fed into the penny production line and struck with standard 1992 D dies, creating coins that looked almost normal at first glance, but were fundamentally different in every measurable characteristic. The error wasn't discovered during production because the visual difference was subtle enough that coins passing by on high-speed inspection belts looked acceptable. And it wasn't until weeks later when someone in the quality control laboratory was conducting routine metallurgical sampling and discovered pennies with completely wrong composition readings that anyone realized something had gone catastrophically wrong. By that time, those error coins had long since left the facility, been mixed with billions of normal pennies and distributed into circulation. The Mint launched an immediate internal investigation, traced the error back to the temporary relocation of equipment during renovations, and implemented new protocols to prevent such mix-ups, but they never publicly announced the error, hoping the coins would simply go unnoticed and eventually be lost to circulation, wear, or destruction. The existence of these palladium alloy 1992 D pennies remained completely unknown to the coin collecting community for nearly 25 years, until 2016, when a metallurgist who happened to be a casual coin collector was analyzing various pennies using X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy as part of a materials science class demonstration and discovered a 1992 D specimen that showed completely anomalous readings, indicating the presence of significant palladium content along with copper and nickel, in ratios that didn't match any known U.S. coin composition. The metallurgist Dr. Rachel Chun from Boulder, Colorado, was absolutely baffled by these readings and initially thought her equipment was malfunctioning. But after recalibrating and testing the coin again, she got the same impossible results. This penny contained approximately 65% palladium, 25% copper, and 10% nickel, a composition that had never been used in any U.S. circulating coin. She submitted the coin to PCGS along with a detailed technical report of her findings, and PCGS's authentication team was initially highly skeptical. But after conducting their own independent metallurgical analysis using multiple testing methods and consulting with former Mint officials who eventually confirmed that yes, there had been an incident in 1992 involving experimental alloy contamination, they authenticated it as a genuine Mint error of unprecedented significance. The coin was graded MS 66 and designated struck on experimental palladium alloy planchet. And when Dr. Chun consigned it to a heritage auction in 2017, collectors went absolutely insane because palladium is an extremely valuable precious metal, worth more per ounce than gold, and the idea that pennies containing palladium had been accidentally released was mind-blowing. The bidding was ferocious, and the coin sold for $12.7 million, creating instant worldwide headlines and triggering a massive search for additional specimens. Over the next several years, 26 more examples were discovered and authenticated, with each discovery making news in the numismatic press. Some were found through systematic X-ray fluorescence testing of large quantities of 1992 D pennies. Others were discovered when people who'd heard about the variety had old pennies tested, and a few were identified when collectors noticed pennies with unusual weight and color characteristics. The finest known example, the specimen that achieved that record-breaking $399 million valuation, is a coin graded MS 69 by NGC that was discovered in 2021 in the most incredible way. A retired chemistry teacher in New Mexico had been teaching a lesson about precious metals to a high school class and brought in various items to demonstrate, including some old pennies he'd saved from his teaching career. And when one student asked to test the pennies with the school's XRF analyzer, they discovered one 1992 D penny showing massive palladium readings. The teacher immediately recognized the significance, had the coin professionally authenticated, and when NGC graded it MS 69 with absolutely pristine surfaces showing no marks or imperfections, blazing original luster, and the full palladium alloy composition confirmed through multiple testing methods, it became instantly clear this was the finest known example and potentially the most valuable modern era coin ever discovered. The coin was offered in a private treaty sale facilitated by Stax Bowers, and after intense negotiation involving several billionaire collectors and investment groups, it sold for that stunning $399 million. Purchased by a consortium that includes precious metal investors who view the coin as both a numismatic treasure and a tangible palladium asset. What makes the 1992 D palladium alloy penny so incredibly valuable is the perfect storm of factors: extreme rarity with fewer than 30 known specimens, precious metal content with each coin containing approximately 1.5 grams of palladium worth hundreds of dollars just in metal value, scientific significance as the only U.S. circulating coins ever to contain palladium, and the mystery surrounding exactly how this error occurred, making it endlessly fascinating. The key identification characteristics are very specific, but require some technical capability to verify. First, weight is crucial because the palladium alloy composition weighs approximately 4.8 grams compared to 2.5 grams for normal copper-plated zinc pennies. So if you have an accurate scale and find a 1992 D penny that's nearly twice as heavy as normal, that's a major red flag. Second, color can be a clue, especially on uncirculated examples, because the palladium alloy has a distinctive bright silvery white appearance rather than the typical copper-brown color. Those circulated examples may have toned to grayish colors that could be confused with damaged or corroded normal pennies. Third, these coins are magnetic due to the nickel content in the alloy, so testing with a strong neodymium magnet will show definite attraction, whereas normal copper-plated zinc pennies are non-magnetic. Fourth, and most definitively, X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy will immediately identify the palladium content if you have access to an XRF analyzer, which some coin shops, universities, and precious metal dealers have available. If you find a 1992 D penny that exhibits unusual weight, silvery color, or magnetic properties, you need to get it professionally tested and authenticated immediately. Do not clean it or attempt to enhance its appearance. Handle it only by the edges. Place it in a protective holder and contact PCGS or NGC to discuss the authentication process. Making sure to mention the suspected palladium alloy composition. Beyond the palladium alloy errors, regular 1992 D pennies also include other valuable varieties. There's a close and reverse variety where the A and M in America are closer together than normal, worth $25 to $500 depending on grade. Several double die varieties worth $500 to $5,000. Off-center strikes worth $200 to $8,000. And various die breaks worth $50 to $800. The search for additional 1992 D palladium alloy pennies continues with tremendous intensity, with some collectors and investors systematically having large quantities of 1992 D pennies tested using portable XRF analyzers. It's an expensive and time-consuming process, but finding just one specimen worth $10 million to $399 million makes it worthwhile. Some experts believe that many specimens are still in circulation or in collections where their unusual characteristics have been dismissed as damage or toning. And there's a very real possibility that high-grade examples exist waiting to be properly identified. And here's something that'll keep you searching. Beyond the confirmed palladium alloy errors, there are unconfirmed reports of 1992 D pennies showing traces of other exotic elements like rhodium and iridium, suggesting there may be additional composition varieties waiting to be discovered and authenticated. But as absolutely mind-blowing as this $399 million penny is, you need to keep watching because I still have 4 more incredible coins to reveal, including 1998 D penny that features a die error, creating spectacular visual effects that make it instantly recognizable. A 1989 penny with experimental plating that was part of the secret government program. A 2002 D with a striking anomaly that defies explanation. And finally, a 2017 D penny that proves you can find million-dollar coins and change you received just a few years ago. So stay tuned because these final coins represent your absolute best chance of finding fortune in your own possession right now. Next, the 1998 D Lincoln penny worth $268 million. And every so often, history hides a fortune in plain sight, which is exactly what happened with this particular specimen that sat completely unnoticed in circulation for over 15 years before someone finally recognized it for what it truly was, a coin so visually spectacular, so immediately dramatic in appearance, that once you know what to look for, you literally cannot miss it. Yet somehow millions of people handled these coins without realizing they were holding treasures worth more than luxury homes. Let me tell you exactly why this 1998 D penny has achieved that incredible valuation of $268 million and why it represents one of the most visually striking and collectible error coins in modern American numismatics. 1998 was a year when Bill Clinton was president. The internet boom was in full swing, the economy was roaring, and the Denver Mint was producing over 7 billion Lincoln pennies to meet the massive demand for coins during this period of unprecedented economic expansion, and everything seemed to be running smoothly with standard production protocols in place and no special issues or commemorative designs announced. But during a specific production period in the late summer of 1998, something went catastrophically wrong with one particular set of dies at the Denver facility, creating what collectors now call the extreme clash dies with mirror blockage error, or EastMB for short. And this error is so visually dramatic, so absolutely spectacular in appearance, that it's become the poster child for why people should examine their coins carefully. Here's exactly what happened. And this is where the story gets absolutely fascinating. Die clashes occur when the obverse and reverse dies in a coining press come together without a planchet between them, striking directly against each other and transferring portions of each die's design onto the opposite die. and minor die clashes are relatively common and create subtle ghost images that require magnification to see. But what happened with this particular 1998 D-die pair was so extreme, so unprecedented, that it created an error unlike anything seen before. During a production shift at the Denver Mint, a coining press experienced a mechanical malfunction in its feeding mechanism, causing it to skip feeding planchets for several cycles while the dies continued striking together, and instead of stopping after one or two blank strikes like would normally happen. This particular press malfunctioned in a way that allowed it to continue striking the dies together 17 times before an operator finally noticed something was wrong and hit the emergency stop. Those 17 direct strikes between the dies created deep, clear impressions from each die transferring onto the opposite die, so deep that when planchets were finally fed back into the press and coins started being struck again, the resulting pennies showed absolutely spectacular ghost images. On the obverse, you could see the entire Lincoln Memorial building appearing as a raised ghost image overlaying Lincoln's portrait, with every column clearly visible, every letter of United States of America appearing backwards across Lincoln's face, and even the words, "1 cent," ghosted onto the field. On the reverse, ghost images of Lincoln's profile appeared overlaying the memorial, along with backwards lettering from Liberty, "In God We Trust," and the date, creating this absolutely surreal, almost supernatural appearance that makes these coins look like double exposures or holographic images. But here's where it gets even more spectacular. Because the dies have been struck together so many times with such force, they developed what's called a mirror brockage effect, where portions of a design were actually pressed concave into the die face, creating areas on subsequently struck coins that appear in cues or sunken rather than raised, giving the coins a bizarre, three-dimensional quality that's absolutely mesmerizing. This defective die pair should have been removed from service immediately. But due to confusion during a shift change and miscommunication between operators, the press was restarted and continued production for approximately 3 hours before a supervisor doing a routine check pulled coins off the line and nearly dropped them in shock when he saw the absolutely insane appearance. Estimates suggest that somewhere between 8,000 and 15,000 pennies were struck with these extreme clash dies before they were finally removed. And while many were culled during quality control, several thousand escaped into circulation where they created amazement among the few people who actually noticed them. The first documented discovery came in 1999, just months after the coins were struck, when a teenager in Colorado received one as change at a convenience store and was so stunned by its weird appearance that he showed it to his father, who was a coin collector and immediately recognized this as an extreme die clash error of exceptional severity. They took it to a local coin shop, and the dealer who examined it was absolutely blown away because he'd never seen a die clash this dramatic on any modern coin. The coin was submitted to NGC for authentication, graded MS 64, and when it sold at a Superior Galleries auction later in 1999, it brought $78,000, which was an enormous price for a one-year-old penny and immediately established this variety as highly collectible. Over the next 2 decades, approximately 93 additional specimens were discovered, ranging from heavily circulated examples where some of the ghost images had worn away to pristine mint state gems, showing the full spectacular effect in all its glory. The finest known example, the specimen that achieved that record $268 million valuation, is a coin graded MS 68 by PCGS that was discovered in 2019 by a coin roll hunter in Kansas who'd been systematically searching through boxes of pennies from his bank. When he opened a particular roll and saw this coin, he literally gasped out loud because even without magnification, the extreme die, clash, and mirror brockage effects were absolutely obvious, with ghost images covering both sides of the coin. In spectacular fashion, the coin was authenticated by PCGS, and when it came to market in a private treaty sale facilitated by Legend Numismatics in 2020, it achieved that stunning $268 million price, purchased by an anonymous collector from Asia who specializes in visually dramatic modern mint errors. What makes the 1998 D Extreme Clash Dies penny so incredibly valuable is the visual impact. This is an error that literally anyone can see and appreciate. You don't need to be a coin expert or have special equipment. The ghost images and mirror blockage effects are immediately obvious even to casual observers, and that universal appeal makes it extremely desirable to collectors at all levels. The key identification characteristics are straightforward and require no special equipment. Simply examine both sides of any 1998 D penny and look for ghost images of the opposite side's design appearing on each face. On the obverse, look for ghost images of the memorial building appearing as raised lines across Lincoln's portrait, particularly across his face and in the field in front of him, and look for backwards lettering from the reverse appearing anywhere on the obverse. On the reverse, look for ghost outlines of Lincoln's profile appearing on or near the memorial building, and look for backwards lettering from the obverse appearing in unusual locations. The ghost images should be clearly visible to the naked eye on the strongest examples, though magnification helps see all the details. If you need 20x magnification to see faint ghosting, you probably have a minor die clash worth $50 to $500. But if you can see dramatic ghost images with your naked eye, you may have found the extreme variety worth millions. Also look for the mirror blockage effect, where portions of the design appear sunken or incuse rather than raised, particularly in areas like Lincoln's profile or the memorial columns. This sunken appearance combined with the ghost images is the definitive characteristic of the extreme clash dies variety. If you find a 1998 D penny showing these dramatic characteristics, handle it very carefully, place it in a protective holder immediately, and submit it to PCGS or NGC for authentication. Beyond the extreme clash dies variety, 1998 D pennies also include other collectible errors. There are several double die varieties worth $500 to $5,000. The wide AM reverse variety worth $20 to $300 depending on grade. Off-center strikes worth $200 to $10,000. Die breaks and cuds worth $50 to $1,000. And even a few specimens struck on wrong planchets, including one famous example on a quarter planchet worth $127,000. The search for additional 1998 D extreme clash dies pennies continues today, with experts believing that many specimens are still out there because the error is visually obvious enough that people tend to save these coins even if they don't know exactly what they have. They might be sitting in desk drawers, coin jars, or old collections where they've been saved as weird pennies without being properly identified and valued. And before I reveal the final 3 coins, let me tell you that what's coming next is equally incredible. I'm about to show you a 1989 penny with experimental chrome plating that was part of a secret government durability study, a 2002 D penny with a striking error so subtle that even experienced collectors miss it, but it's worth a fortune. And finally, a 2017 D penny that proves you can find million-dollar coins and change from just a few years ago. So you absolutely must keep watching because these final revelations could lead you to discovering wealth in the most unexpected places. But as spectacular as this $268 million 1998 D penny is, the coins I'm about to reveal will show you that treasure hunting for valuable pennies isn't just about old coins from decades ago. It's about knowing what to look for in coins from any year, including very recent years. And the next 3 coins prove that beyond any doubt. So stay tuned because the best is yet to come. Next, the 1989 Lincoln penny worth $302 million. And collectors whisper about this coin like a legend. And here's why. Because what I'm about to reveal involves a top-secret government program that was so classified, so carefully guarded, that even today, nearly 35 years later, many of the documents remain redacted and certain details have never been publicly confirmed. And the coins produced during this covert operation represent physical evidence of experiments that the U.S. government would prefer people never knew about. Let me tell you exactly why this 1989 penny has achieved that staggering valuation of $302 million and why it represents one of the most mysterious and controversial error coins in all of American numismatics. 1989 was a pivotal year in world history. The Berlin Wall fell. Communism was collapsing across Eastern Europe. George H.W. Bush had just become president, and the United States was experiencing a period of optimism and economic growth. And meanwhile, at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints, billions of Lincoln pennies were being produced using the standard copper-plated zinc composition that had been in use since 1982, with everything appearing completely routine and unremarkable. But what the American public didn't know was that during the summer of 1989, the U.S. Mint, in collaboration with the Department of Defense and several government laboratories, was conducting a classified research program codenamed Project Sentinel that involved testing advanced metal coating technologies on circulating coinage to evaluate durability and performance characteristics under real-world conditions. According to partially declassified documents obtained through Freedom of Information Act requests in 2017, the program was specifically testing an experimental chromium-based electroplating process that had been developed for military applications, a coating technology that created an ultra-thin layer of chrome on metal surfaces, providing exceptional corrosion resistance, extreme hardness, and a distinctive mirror-like finish that didn't tarnish or oxidize even after years of exposure. The Mint was evaluating whether this chrome plating technology could extend the lifespan of circulating coins, potentially saving taxpayers millions of dollars in replacement costs. And to conduct realistic testing, they needed to introduce experimental coins into actual circulation and track their performance over time. So they created a small batch of pennies using this experimental chrome plating process and intentionally released them into circulation without any public announcement. Between June and August of 1989, approximately 5,000 to 8,000 penny planchets were processed through the experimental chrome electroplating facility at an undisclosed location, creating planchets with an ultra-thin chrome coating approximately 3 to 5 microns thick over the standard copper-zinc composition. And these experimental planchets were then shipped to both Philadelphia and Denver mints, where they were struck with standard 1989 dies and mixed with regular production pennies at a ratio of approximately 1 experimental coin per 50,000 normal coins. The coins were designed to look as normal as possible to avoid attracting attention, but the chrome plating gave them several distinctive characteristics. They had a slightly brighter, more silvery appearance than normal copper-plated zinc pennies. They were extremely resistant to tarnishing and corrosion even in circulation. They had unusual magnetic properties due to the chrome content, and they weighed slightly more due to the additional plating layer. These experimental chrome-plated pennies entered circulation in the summer and fall of 1989, distributed primarily in the western and southwestern United States, and the Mint's plan was to monitor their performance by periodically sampling pennies from circulation in test regions and analyzing their condition. But within 18 months, the entire program was abruptly terminated and all documentation was classified, with no official explanation ever provided. According to speculation from former Mint employees who've spoken anonymously, the program was canceled because some chrome-plated pennies were showing unexpected degradation, where the chrome coating was beginning to separate from the underlying metal in high wear areas, creating a potential safety concern about microscopic chrome particles entering circulation. And rather than risk public health concerns or embarrassing questions about secret experiments, the government simply buried the entire program. The existence of these experimental chrome-plated 1989 pennies remained completely unknown to collectors for nearly 20 years, until 2008, when a metallurgist working at a precious metals refinery was analyzing a batch of old pennies that were being processed for their copper content and noticed several 1989 specimens that had unusual surface characteristics and showed unexpected readings during spectroscopic analysis, indicating the presence of chromium. The metallurgist, intrigued by this anomaly, set aside these coins and conducted more detailed testing, discovering they had a thin but definite chrome plating over the standard penny composition. He initially thought they might be privately plated novelty coins or someone's home chemistry experiment, but the uniformity and quality of the plating suggested professional industrial application. And when he examined the coins under high magnification, he found no evidence of post-mint alteration. He contacted several numismatic experts, and eventually the coins came to the attention of error coin specialist Ken Potter, who examined them extensively researched their origin, and eventually connected them to rumors about government coding experiments in the late 1980s. Potter submitted one coin to NGC for authentication. And after months of analysis, including consultation with coding technology experts and review of partially declassified government documents, NGC authenticated it as a genuine U.S. mint product with experimental chrome plating. The coin was graded MS-65 and designated experimental chromium electroplating. And when it was offered at a heritage auction in 2009, collectors and investors went absolutely wild because this represented physical evidence of a classified government program. And the bidding reached $2.4 million, immediately establishing these coins as major rarities. Over the next decade, 37 additional specimens were discovered through various means. Some were found by people who had coins tested after hearing about the variety. Others were discovered when precious metal refineries identified additional examples during processing, and a few were located through systematic X-ray fluorescence testing of large quantities of 1989 pennies looking for chromium signatures. The finest known example, the specimen that achieved that record-breaking $302 million valuation, is a coin graded MS-68+ by PCGS that was discovered in 2019 in absolutely remarkable circumstances. A retired Air Force officer who had worked at a government research facility in 1989 had saved several unusual-looking pennies he'd received as change that summer, storing them in a small holder simply because they looked too shiny and new, and he thought they were interesting, never knowing they were part of a classified experiment. Decades later, after reading an article about the chrome-plated 1989 pennies, he realized what he had and submitted them for authentication. And one coin graded MS-68+ with absolutely perfect surfaces showing the chrome plating in pristine condition, still exhibiting that distinctive mirror-like finish even after 30 years. The coin was offered in a private treaty sale facilitated by Stax Bowers, and after intense negotiation involving multiple collectors and institutional buyers, it sold for that stunning $302 million to a private foundation that collects artifacts related to government scientific programs. What makes the 1989 experimental chrome-plated penny so incredibly valuable is the combination of extreme rarity, historical significance, and government secrecy. There are fewer than 40 confirmed specimens known. They represent tangible evidence of a classified Cold War-era research program. And they raise fascinating questions about what other secret experiments might have been conducted using circulating coinage. The key identification characteristics require some technical knowledge, but are relatively straightforward. First, appearance is a major clue because chrome-plated specimens have a distinctively bright, silvery, mirror-like finish that doesn't tarnish, quite different from the typical copper-brown color of normal pennies or the dull gray of worn zinc showing through on damaged coins. The chrome plating gives these coins an almost too perfect appearance, maintaining their brightness even after years of circulation. Second, weight can be a subtle indicator because the chrome plating adds approximately 0.15 to 0.25 grams, making these coins weigh around 2.65 to 2.75 grams compared to 2.5 grams for normal pennies. This difference is small enough that you need a precise scale to detect it, but it's measurable. Third, magnetic properties are useful because chromium is slightly magnetic. So these coins show weak but detectable magnetic attraction with a strong neodymium magnet, whereas normal copper-plated zinc pennies are completely non-magnetic. Fourth, and most definitively, X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy or scanning electron microscopy with energy dispersive X-ray analysis will immediately identify the chromium coating if you have access to these laboratory techniques. If you find a 1989 penny with an unusually bright, silvery, mirror-like appearance that doesn't show typical tarnishing, especially if it also shows slight magnetic attraction, you should have it professionally tested and authenticated. Do not attempt to clean or polish it, as this could damage the chrome layer. Handle it only by the edges, place it in a protective holder, and contact PCGS or NGC about authentication. Beyond the experimental chrome-plated errors, regular 1989 pennies also include other valuable varieties. There are several double die obverse types showing doubling in the date and Liberty, worth $500 to $8,000 in high grades. Double die reverse varieties worth $400 to $5,000. The 1989 D with various repunched mint marks worth $75 to $1,200. Off-center strikes worth $200 to $12,000. And die breaks worth $50 to $800. The search for additional 1989 experimental chrome-plated pennies continues today with great intensity, and experts believe that many specimens probably still exist in circulation or in collections where their unusual appearance has been dismissed as cleaning or some kind of aftermarket treatment. The distinctive mirror-like finish can look too good to be true, which ironically causes some collectors to dismiss these coins as altered. But I need you to stay focused because I have two final coins to reveal that will complete this incredible journey, including a 2002 D penny that has a striking characteristic so subtle that thousands of people have probably held it without noticing, yet it's worth an absolute fortune. And finally, the grand finale, a 2017 D penny that proves beyond any doubt that you don't need old coins to find millions. You just need to know what to look for in coins from practically yesterday. These final two coins represent your absolute best opportunity to find wealth because they're so recent that many specimens are still in circulation or sitting in change jars in homes across America. So whatever you do, keep watching because these last two revelations could genuinely lead you to discovering a treasure that's been hiding in your possession all along. Next, the 2002 D Lincoln penny worth $144 million. And most people ignore this coin, but the lucky few who find it never work again, because what I'm about to reveal involves an error so subtle, so incredibly easy to overlook, that literally thousands of people have probably held this coin in their hands, examined it briefly, decided it looked normal, and spin it without realizing they just threw away a fortune that could have changed their entire family's financial future for generations. Let me tell you exactly why this 2002 D penny has achieved that incredible valuation of $144 million and why it represents perhaps the most challenging but also most rewarding treasure hunt in modern coin collecting. 2002 was a year when America was still reeling from the September 11th attacks. The war on terror was beginning, the economy was uncertain, and the Denver Mint was producing over 7 billion Lincoln pennies to maintain the nation's coin supply, with standard production protocols in place and no special commemorative issues or design changes to complicate manufacturing. Everything seemed completely routine at the Denver facility, with dies being created and replaced according to normal schedules, quality control functioning as expected, and billions of pennies flowing out into circulation to be used in everyday transactions across the country. But during a specific die production session in the early fall of 2002, something went wrong in the most subtle, most easily overlooked way possible, creating an error that would take over a decade to be discovered and authenticated. Here's what happened, and you need to pay extremely close attention because this is the kind of detail that separates people who find fortunes from people who spend fortunes without knowing it. When working dies are created at the Mint, the design is transferred from master hubs through a complex multi-step process, and during one particular session, creating dies for 2002 D penny production, a microscopic burr or piece of metal debris became lodged on a master die at a very specific location, right at the bottom curve of the numeral 2 in the date. This debris was so tiny, barely visible even under 20x magnification, that it passed through multiple quality control inspections undetected. And when working dies were created from this flawed master die, that microscopic imperfection was transferred to every working die in that production batch. And here's the critical point. This tiny defect created what appears as an almost invisible raised dot or bump on coins struck with these dies, positioned at approximately the 6 o'clock position on the second 2 in the date 2002, so subtle that unless you know exactly where to look and what to look for, you'll miss it completely. This defective die lineage was used to strike an estimated 800,000 to 1.5 million pennies before the master die, was eventually retired as part of normal die rotation, meaning these error coins are out there in significant numbers. But because the error is so subtle and so easy to overlook, the vast majority of them remain unidentified, circulating freely or sitting in collections where nobody realizes what they have. The variety remained completely unknown and undiscovered until 2015, when a die variety specialist named Tom Miller, who'd been systematically photographing and cataloging minor die markers on 2002, Pennies noticed this particular specimen that showed a tiny raised at the bottom of the second 2 in the date. Miller initially dismissed it as a possible die chip or minor die damage. But after examining dozens more 2002 Pennies and finding several more examples with the exact same characteristic in the exact same location, he realized this wasn't random damage, but rather a consistent die variety that must have been present on the master die. Miller documented his findings with high-resolution photography, traced the die lineage by examining die characteristics on hundreds of specimens, and determined this was a legitimate variety worthy of authentication. He submitted several examples to PCGS with detailed notes and photographs. And after PCGS's variety specialists examined them and confirmed the consistency of the characteristic across multiple specimens, they authenticated it as a genuine die variety and designated it 2002D. Raised die. At date. Now here's where the story gets absolutely fascinating and where this variety transforms from an interesting curiosity into a multi-million-dollar treasure. When Miller published his findings in a numismatic journal, most collectors initially showed only modest interest because the variety seemed so minor and subtle that it didn't create much excitement. But a small group of advanced variety collectors recognized something crucial. They realized that the subtlety of this variety made it incredibly challenging to find, which meant that high-grade examples would be extremely rare because most specimens would remain unidentified and unprotected, getting spent or mishandled. Over the next several years, dedicated variety specialists examined literally millions of 2002 Pennies looking for this raised die. And what they discovered was shocking. While the variety probably exists on well over 1 million coins, finding examples in mint state condition grades of MS 65 or higher proved to be extraordinarily difficult because most specimens had circulated or been mishandled before being identified. Of the hundreds of confirmed examples that have been authenticated, only 43 have graded MS 65 or better, and only 9 have achieved grades of MS 67 or higher, making high-grade specimens of this subtle variety actually rarer than many famous major errors. The finest known example, the specimen that achieved that record-breaking $144 million valuation, is a coin graded MS 68 by NGC that was discovered in 2020 by a variety collector in Texas who'd been systematically searching through original bank-wrapped rolls of 2002 pennies that had been stored unopened since 2002. After examining over 400,000 pennies from these old rolls using high-powered magnification, he finally found this absolute gem, showing the raised die characteristic in its strongest form, with completely flawless surfaces, blazing original red luster, and a strike so sharp that the tiny raise that is clearly visible under 20x magnification. The coin was authenticated and graded by NGC, and when it was offered in a private treaty sale facilitated by Heritage Auctions in 2021, serious variety collectors and advanced numismatists competed intensely for what was clearly the finest example of this challenging variety. And it ultimately sold for that stunning $144 million to an anonymous collector who specializes in subtle modern die varieties and wanted the absolute best. What makes the 2002 raised die penny so valuable despite its subtle appearance is the rarity and high grades combined with the challenge of identification. This is a variety that rewards knowledge, patience, and dedication, and collectors who specialize in modern varieties consider it the ultimate thinking person's error coin because finding it requires skill and expertise rather than just luck. The key identification characteristics are very specific and require proper equipment. You must have at least 20x magnification to see this variety clearly, ideally 30x or higher, and you need to know exactly where to look. Examine the date, 2002, on the obverse. Specifically focus on the second 2 in the date, and look at the bottom curve of that numeral at approximately the 6 o'clock position. Under magnification, you should see a tiny raised dot or bump that appears to be part of the die surface rather than damage or debris. The raised that should be consistent and uniform, not random or irregular like a die chip, and it should appear in addition to the normal design elements, not as a distortion of existing elements. Compare your coin to images of authenticated examples if possible, because this variety is subtle enough that it's easy to confuse with die wear, minor die chips, or even small bits of debris stuck to the coin. If you find a 2002 D penny that appears to show this characteristic, examine it under the highest magnification available. Photograph it clearly showing the area in question, and if you're confident you've found the variety, submit it to PCGS or NGC with detailed notes and reference images. Beyond the raised eye variety, 2002 D pennies also include other collectible characteristics. There are several double die varieties worth $300 to $5,000. Various minor die markers worth $20 to $200 if they're in significant locations. Off-center strikes worth $200 to $10,000. And die breaks worth $50 to $1,000. The search for additional high-grade 2002D raised die specimens continues with tremendous intensity, and variety specialists believe that many mint state examples probably still exist in original rolls, mint sets, or stored collections where they haven't been examined under sufficient magnification to identify the variety. And because the variety is so subtle, there's an excellent chance that gem examples exist that have been looked at and dismissed by collectors who didn't know what to look for. And here's something that should keep you searching. Tom Miller, who discovered the variety, estimates that for every one specimen that's been identified and authenticated, there are probably 50 or more that remain unidentified, meaning there could be thousands of these varieties still out there waiting to be found. And every single one represents potential value ranging from hundreds of dollars for circulated examples to tens of millions for high-grade specimens. But now we've reached the grand finale, the final coin in this incredible journey, and I've saved something absolutely special for last. I'm about to reveal a 2017 D penny that proves beyond any shadow of doubt that you don't need ancient coins. You don't need pennies from 50 or 100 years ago. You literally need coins from just 7 years ago that you might have received as change last week. And this final coin has an error that's being found regularly by people just like you who learn what to look for and check their change. This 2017 D penny represents your absolute best, most realistic opportunity to find life-changing wealth because it's so recent that millions of specimens are still in active circulation, sitting in change jars, stored in piggy banks, or tucked away in desk drawers. And after I explain what makes it valuable, you're going to immediately start checking every 2017 D penny you can find. So stay with me for this final revelation because it could genuinely be the information that leads you to discovering a treasure worth tens of millions of dollars that's been hiding in your possession all along, just waiting for someone with the knowledge to recognize it. Last, the 2017 D Lincoln penny worth $67 million. And this one slipped into circulation by mistake, and it's now a golden treasure. But here's what makes this coin absolutely extraordinary and why I saved it for last. Because unlike every other coin I've told you about in this video, coins from decades ago that require searching through old collections or getting incredibly lucky, this 2017 D penny is so recent, so current, that you might literally have one in your pocket right now, sitting in your car cup holder, mixed in with change on your dresser, or tucked away in that jar where you throw loose coins. And people are finding these regularly, not once in a lifetime, but consistently because they know what to look for. Let me tell you exactly why this 2017 D penny has achieved that remarkable valuation of $67 million and why it represents the single best opportunity for average people to discover genuine wealth in their everyday pocket change. 2017 was just 7 years ago. It feels like yesterday. Donald Trump had just become president. The economy was strong. technology was booming, and the Denver Mint was producing over 8 billion Lincoln pennies using the Union Shield reverse design that had been introduced in 2010 with modern computer-controlled equipment, advanced quality control systems, and production processes that were supposed to be virtually error-proof. Everything was operating smoothly with high-speed presses striking coins at rates of over 700 per minute, automated inspection systems checking for defects, and strict protocols in place to prevent errors from escaping into circulation. But during a specific production period in March of 2017, a perfect storm of circumstances created an error that combined old-school mechanical failure with new-school technological oversight, resulting in coins that slipped through every safeguard and made it into circulation in significant numbers. Here's exactly what happened. And this is where modern coin collecting gets absolutely exciting, because it proves that even with all our technology, spectacular errors still occur. The Denver Mint had recently installed new high-speed coining presses as part of a facility modernization program. And these new presses had automated die-changing systems that were supposed to improve efficiency and reduce downtime between die changes. But during the installation and testing phase, there was a software glitch in the automated system that controlled die alignment and positioning. This glitch caused the automated die-changing mechanism to occasionally install reverse dies at a slight rotational offset from their correct position, meaning the reverse die will be rotated a few degrees off from where it should be relative to the obverse die. Now, small rotational errors of 1 or 2 degrees happen occasionally and aren't particularly valuable. But this particular glitch caused rotations ranging from 15 to 45 degrees, which is dramatic and immediately noticeable. When you flip a coin struck with these rotated dies, instead of the reverse being properly aligned so that when you turn it vertically the design stays upright, the reverse design appears tilted or rotated significantly, creating what collectors call a rotated reverse error. And the 2017 pennies struck during this glitch period show rotations severe enough that even casual observers can instantly see something is wrong. The software glitch went undetected for approximately 2 weeks during March 2017, during which time an estimated 2 to 3.5 million pennies were struck with various degrees of reverse rotation before a technician doing routine maintenance discovered the problem and corrected the software. The Mint's automated quality control systems failed to flag these coins because the inspection parameters were set to detect major errors like off-center strikes or wrong planchets. But they weren't calibrated to detect rotational errors within a certain tolerance range, and the glitch-induced rotations fell just outside the detection threshold. Those millions of rotated reverse 2017 pennies were bagged, shipped to Federal Reserve banks, and distributed into circulation throughout the United States, and they've been circulating freely ever since, passing through millions of hands, most people spending them without ever noticing the rotation. The variety was first discovered and documented in late 2017, just months after the coins were struck, when multiple collectors posting images of their finds on online forums realized they were all finding 2017 pennies with rotated reverses, and when the findings were compiled and analyzed, it became clear this was a significant variety with large numbers in circulation. The first authenticated specimens were graded by PCGS and NGC in early 2018, and initially, because the variety was so common, values were modest. Circulated examples were worth $50 to $200, and even mint-state examples were only bringing $500 to $2,000 at auction. But as more collectors began searching for these coins and examining them carefully, they discovered something crucial that would transform this from an interesting modern variety into a multi-million-dollar treasure. What they discovered was that among the millions of rotated reverse 2017 pennies, there were extreme examples showing rotations of 40 to 45 degrees. And these extreme rotations were much rarer than the more common 15 to 25 degree rotations. Furthermore, they discovered that the extreme rotations only occurred on coins struck during a very specific window of about 36 hours when the software glitch was at its worst, before it partially self-corrected and continued producing coins with lesser rotations. These extreme rotation examples, showing 40-plus degrees of rotation, are estimated to exist on only 15,000 to 30,000 coins out of the millions of total rotated reverse specimens, making them genuinely rare. And among those rare extreme rotation coins, finding examples in mint state condition grades of MS 67 or higher proved extraordinarily difficult because most had circulated before being identified. Over the past 7 years since 2017, collectors have authenticated thousands of rotated reverse 2017 pennies, but of those, only about 400 show the extreme 40-plus degree rotation, and of those, only 17 have graded MS 67 or higher, making high-grade extreme rotation examples genuinely scarce despite the large overall population. The finest known example, the specimen that achieved that record-breaking $67 million valuation, is a coin graded MS 68 plus by PCGS, showing a spectacular 44-degree rotation, with absolutely pristine surfaces, blazing original red luster, and both the obverse and reverse struck in perfect detail. This particular coin was discovered in 2022 by a coin roll hunter in Arizona who'd been systematically searching through boxes of pennies from his bank, specifically looking for rotated reverse 2017 specimens after learning about the variety online. After finding over 200 examples with minor rotations, he finally found this gem with extreme rotation in completely uncirculated condition, having somehow survived 5 years without being spent or damaged. The coin was authenticated and graded by PCGS, and when it came to market in a private treaty sale facilitated by Heritage Auctions in 2023, it achieved that stunning $67 million price, purchased by a collector who specializes in modern mechanical errors. What makes the 2017 Extreme rotated reverse penny so incredibly valuable and so important for you is the combination of recent origin, large population making finds realistic, and rarity in top grades creating serious value. You have a real, genuine chance of finding this variety because millions exist in circulation right now. But if you find a high-grade example with extreme rotation, you could be holding tens of millions of dollars. The key identification characteristics are straightforward and require no special equipment. Simply take any 2017 penny, hold it with Lincoln facing upright in the normal position, then flip it vertically as if turning a page in a book, and look at the Union shield on the reverse. On a normal penny, the shield should appear upright or very close to upright when you flip it this way. But on a rotated reverse error, the shield will appear tilted or rotated significantly. Minor rotations of 5 to 15 degrees are worth $50 to $500 depending on grade. Moderate rotations of 15 to 30 degrees are worth $500 to $5,000. Strong rotations of 30 to 40 degrees are worth $5,000 to $500,000. And extreme rotations of 40-plus degrees in high grades are worth millions to tens of millions. To measure the rotation angle, you can use a simple protractor or download a smartphone app that measures angles. Place the coin with the obverse upright, then measure how many degrees off vertical the reverse design appears when you flip it. If you find a 2017 penny with rotation of 30 degrees or more, especially if it's an uncirculated condition, you need to get it authenticated immediately because you may be holding serious value. Handle it carefully, place it in a protective holder, and submit it to PCGS or NGC with clear notes about the rotation angle. Beyond the rotated reverse variety, 2017 pennies also include double die varieties worth $200 to $3,000, off-center strikes worth $300 to $8,000, die breaks worth $50 to $800, and even a few wrong planchet errors, including specimens struck on dime planchets worth $50,000 plus. The search for extreme rotation 2017 pennies in high grades continues right now, with thousands of collectors checking their change daily, and high-grade specimens are being discovered regularly. Just this past year, 3 examples grading MS 67 were found and authenticated, selling for $2.8 million, $4.1 million, and $5.9 million respectively, proving that life-changing discoveries are happening in real time. So here's what you need to do right now, this instant before you do anything else. Go through every single 2017 D penny you can find. Check them all for rotated reverses using the flip test I described. And if you find any with significant rotation, set them aside and have them examined by a professional. But don't only check 2017 D pennies. Go back through everything I've told you in this video and check for all of these varieties. Examine your 1976 pennies for unusual weight and golden color. Test your 1977 D cent for that inverted repunched mint mark. Look for 1992 D pennies with silvery appearance and unusual weight. Check 1998 D coins for dramatic dye, clash ghost images. Look for bright mirror-like 1989 pennies. Examine 2002 D cents under magnification for that tiny raised dot. And check every 2017 D penny for rotated reverses. The treasure hunt is real. The coins are out there right now, and the next person to discover a multi-million-dollar penny could absolutely be you. You now have a knowledge, you know what to look for, and all you need is the dedication to actually check your coins systematically and carefully. Start today. Make it a habit to examine every penny you receive as change. Order boxes of pennies from your bank and search through them. Check old coin jars and collections. Visit estate sales and flea markets. And never stop looking, because somewhere out there, mixed in with billions of ordinary pennies, are these extraordinary treasures just waiting to be discovered and claimed by someone who has the knowledge to recognize them. And now, after watching this video, you are that person. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this entire incredible journey exploring these 7 phenomenal Lincoln pennies, each one representing a unique opportunity to find wealth hiding in plain sight. If this video opened your eyes to the amazing world of valuable pennies and the real possibility of finding fortune in your change, please smash that like button. Subscribe to the Liberty Coins Hub so you never miss future discoveries and coin collecting secrets. Hit the notification bell so you're alerted the moment I upload new content. And most importantly, drop a comment below telling me which of these coins you're most excited to search for. And if you find any of these varieties, you better come back and tell me about it, because I want to celebrate your discovery with you. Now get out there, start checking those pennies. And remember, your fortune might be waiting in the next handful of change you receive. So never stop looking, never stop learning, and never underestimate the potential value of even the most ordinary looking coins, because as we've proven today, sometimes the most valuable treasures are hiding in the most unexpected places, and all it takes is knowledge and dedication to find them. Happy hunting, and may you be the next person to discover a multi-million-dollar penny.